Hello, Steve. You're up next.
Hi, Bart. Thanks for taking the call.
No problem, man. Where are you playing out of here?
Well, this one was out of Bellagio, 510.
Bellagio 510, which is a 2K cap now. Is that right? Or 2,500 now or something?
25, I think it was 2,500. And I don't usually, I'm not usually out there, but I was out for the World Series. Got knocked out. And the next day I was like, the lines are crazy to get in cash games late in the day. So I was like, let me go early, open a table and see what I can do.
Yeah, so Bellagio used to be 1,500. I think they changed it maybe, I don't know, a year or two ago or something like that. But it was the only 510, 1,500 game in town. But just to go with you're saying about the WSOP, especially on a weekend with like a mega event like a Deep Stack or like, Colossus, Monster Stack, the cash game lines are just insane. And the only way you can get in really is get in the beginning, right? Beginning of the day.
Yeah, so I opened up a table and we'd been playing for a couple hours. I was up about $800 at the time of this hand.
So how deep are you in this particular hand?
So I was at 3,300, but the effective stack was the villain at 2,200.
All right, so 2,200 effective. And Michael G, moderator extraordinaire in the live chat, saying that I know this guy. Do you usually play at Parks? Are you from Philly?
Yeah, I do.
Ah.
I've been playing at Parks for ages, though. I'm like a dangerous wreck. I don't get to play too often, but I consider myself pretty competent.
So do you play 10-10 at Parks?
I actually play 2-5 mostly there,
Okay.
But almost everywhere else I go, I play 10-10.
All right, so 2,200 effective. Okay.
Yeah, so cutoff raises to 30. I'm in the big blind with King of Spades, 8 of Spades. And, obviously I could mix in raising, calling, or folding, that I chose to defend this one.
Yeah, I don't know if I would take this one as a 3-bet necessarily heads up, like in one that doesn't necessarily connect. I might throw like those 3-bets coming out of the big blind like as a squeeze spot. I talked a little bit this on the flagship podcast. If you're ever in like a 3-blind format, a static 3-blind format, like where there's always a straddle on and somebody in like the small blind or the big blind calls, then you could throw in some like 3-bets with like some suited connectors and stuff like that. This is a 3x open from the cutoff. You've got, it's 20 to call. I'm fine with the call. So you make the call and the pot is what, 65?
Yep, right there.
Okay.
And the flop is 3 of hearts, 5 of spades, 6 of spades.
3 of hearts, 5 of spades, 6 of spades. So you flop a king high flush draw here with an 8, king 8 of spades.
Yep. So I have a little backdoor straight action, right? The king high flush draw overs.
Yep.
And obviously the flop ought to favor me a little bit just in terms of ranges. So I do check, and the cutoff bets 40.
So cutoff bets 40. And like you said, you've got an overcard, you've got spades. The later the position the open comes from, the more hands he's going to have. So this would be one where it would definitely favor you more against like an early position raiser.
Yeah, just slightly favor.
Yeah, I mean, the cutoff's still, he's not on the button, but sure. I mean, you could throw in some raises here. I mean, the only thing that I would think about though too is how often, if you have any experience with this player, like does somebody have it's like c-bet awareness where they're not just monkey c-betting, because sometimes when somebody c-bets, especially in a multi-way board, and they're a good player, if they're approaching the game correctly, they're not going to have a ton of bet folds because they wouldn't be betting the flop all that much. And then you'll see some people mix in some checks and stuff with overpairs and things like that. But okay, so you check cutoff bets 40.
Yeah, and it was still early, so I can't say I had the most fantastic reads at that point.
Yeah.
And I did choose to re-raise to 120. Obviously thinking the range favors me, happy to take it down, but I have plenty of value if the hand continues.
So you go to 120, okay.
And villain calls.
Cutoff calls. So now you guys are at like 305. You put in 240. What do you think his range is here?
Yeah, so with a call, now I'm narrowing him down to overpairs, some Broadway floats, and even possibly worse or better flush draws, though I have blockers to both because I have a middle and high spade, obviously. Throw in some 7-8 suited maybe, or possibly 7-9 for a double gutter.
Yeah, I don't think that he's going to call. Well, your check raise is kind of small, as people in the chat have made out. I mean, you guys are pretty deep. You chose to only go to 3x. I don't know if people even to 3x, though, are continuing here with like Queen Jack of Hearts. I don't think I would continue here with Queen Jack of Hearts all that much, although much like when you actually c-bet really small, because you've check raised small, he might end up with some hands that might seem a little bit wide because you're small sizing. Obviously, if he's got any 4 or any 7 here, spades, overpair, I think it's even still kind of hard for him to fold any pair here. Like even if he raised with like ace 5, I would be kind of seeing like what's going on, like in a, kind of like in a certain situation. But so right now the pot is 305 and we head to the turn.
Which is the 8 of diamonds.
The 8 of diamonds here. So now the board is 6-5-3-2 spades, turns the 8 of diamonds. So you turn top pair here.
I do. And, obviously I could have some value, but there's plenty of drawing hands I could have against, his likely overpairs that are still behind. But I do think it's worth leading out. So I bet 230.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're still putting pressure on this guy. Bets 230.
Yeah, if I can get him to surrender a pair of 9s or 10s, I feel like, he might get cold feet given how connected the board is.
Well, 9s picks up a gut shot. I mean, maybe 10s. I mean, the only thing here is that kind of as a gut reflex, it's like you make a top pair type of hand. I mean, what I would be thinking about is like what types of turn cards would you be not betting here with your draw? Forget about the fact that you hit top pair. 8 is kind of interesting because it kind of brings in like a 7-9 and gives you additional equity here. Even if you had like a hand like 7-6, I'm assuming that you probably would have checked if the board had paired here, like a 3-5 or 6 maybe.
Yeah, that or if an ace had come off, there's a chance that he was playing ace of spades X with high cards, and that could easily put me way behind. So there's some turns I think I would check to, but I feel like this one is well within my range, and I can continue to apply pressure to those middling pairs.
Well, it gives you additional equity on some semi-bluffs as well if your opponent has some cuspy hands. Like right now, if he has like, say, king 6, ace 6, king 5, ace 5 suited, and you lead on this card, I'm definitely folding if I were him.
Yeah.
And even also too, if you had a hand like ace 4 or king 4, which is open-ended, that's gonna, because the 8 comes, the top end of that open-ended for someone with 4x, if a 7 comes, it's going to bring in a one-liner to a 9. So that also decreases the value of that draw. So I can kind of get on board here with this bet. So you go 230, okay?
I do, and he calls.
So cutoff calls again, and now we're at 460 plus 305, so we're at 765, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Right around there. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the river is the king of hearts.
Oh, wow. Well, this is an interesting one. So you make kings up here, top 2.
Yeah, highly disguised.
Yeah, I mean, value all day long, right? I mean, that's a great, obviously an 8 would have been a good card for you as well.
Yeah, similar, very similar.
Right, but I mean, a king I think is great because now, all those pair plus straight draw types of things, if you weren't already there, they break out.
Yeah, and look, it's 7-8, an 8 is scarier to an overpair because if I have 7-8, I might have played the same way, but the king is, a highly disguised 2 pair. So
right, and then would you continue to bluff? Say if the river was a queen here instead of a king, would you have continued on here with a bluff?
Honestly, I was on the fence with that choice. I mean, I hadn't decided if I should shift to a check call mode. If he has a hand like maybe pocket 4s or something where he tries to convert it into a bluff. I was on the fence with what I would do on some rivers, but this one, it seemed pretty clear both that I had value to go after and that it might look like all the draws missed, right? And it might look like I'm turning a spade draw, a pair and a straight draw, that kind of thing, into a bluff at this point.
It's funny because the consensus in the chat right here in terms of what your sizing should be on the river, a lot of people are saying bet small, bet small. But as a gut reaction for me, though, if he had any pair that he was heroing you down with, like you just said, this is kind of a disconnected card, and he might hero you down again here, like 9s plus. The king doesn't really change anything except the fact that if you were starting some sort of king X bluff that maybe had like a 2 pair. So I don't know if I would go so small that people are saying. I mean, I would maybe a 500. Kind of now some people are saying overbet. Yeah, I mean, the only issue with the overbet here though is that I feel like you do have enough 2 pair and the 8 connects with that board enough where he might start folding off some of those types of one pair holdings in a certain spot here.
Yeah, and I'd like to get called by 9s through queens or aces, right? I think it's easy enough to get called by a lot of his reasonable pair holdings at this point. And it could look like I'm representing that I hit that king, like pretending to have it, right, with the flush draw that holds the king.
So what kind of sizing did you go with?
So I went with 520.
Okay, so you kind of agree with me.
Yeah, I really thought that making it look a little bit bluffy with a slightly larger sizing was the way to go. That's probably what I may have done if I wanted to, right, get the guy off the hand. So I went with 520.
Okay.
And the hero deliberates and then goes all in.
The villain.
The villain goes all in.
All in. Oh, wow. For how much total?
1,300 more.
1,300 more?
Yeah.
So 1,820 total. Wow. Oof.
Yeah.
This is interesting. So you bet 520 into 765. That's 1,285. And now he's going all in for 1,820 total. So it's like 3,100, 1,300 for you to call, right? 3,100 in the pot, 1,300 to call. And again, this is interesting too, kind of like the previous call from the last live stream. Like on paper, you look at this and like, wow, I've got, a very strong hand here to call down with. My only thinking, this is a tough one, is that usually when you start making a play on a board that favors you in a certain spot, like coming out of the blinds, and then somebody puts pressure on you when you can have like hands like 7-4, stuff like that, and they don't have all that much, all the small pairs. And again, he did come from a late position open, and then his response as a bluff catch would be to just call. It seems very, very strong. Now, what could he have here? He could have 7-9. I don't know if he would ever like raise with like 7-4. And I don't know. I'm trying to think if he raises at the end here without anything but a straight. Like, if I had a set of on the flop and I was your villain, right? And I chose to call your check raise. And now you take this line here of betting because it's an 8 on the turn and you continue to bet river. Boy, I don't know if I'm raising here with anything maybe but 7-9, 7-4, 6-6. I mean, I can have a better set than you. 5-5 gets worrisome. Of course, if he turns 8-8, then you can have all the sets. So 8-8, you could make a case for a raise. And then the chances that he has king-king is probably not there. Because remember, you're coming out of the blind. I mean, if you've got king-8 here suited, I don't know if you call with 7-9 off in the big blind here or what, but I mean, yeah, people are saying what value do you beat? You certainly don't beat any value, that's for sure. The question is the cutoff ever like turning something into a bluff? And you're blocking like front door spades here too.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if he converted his hand at this point. And I was almost asking for it with the approach I took, right? With the, check raise and then bet and then bet. He might think that I have a hand like 3-4 suited at this point. Maybe he has nothing, but he wants to take it away.
But what nothing does he have here? Like ace 7 of hearts, you mean?
Yeah, something with a 4 in it, like an ace 4, or, it just, does he feel like I'm likely to not have enough value to be able to call a raise?
Again, the way that this hand sort of goes out, I don't know if he's turning any types of hands here into a bluff. Maybe, I guess you could go down the weeds and say 7-7 or something like that, because you're more skewed towards having like a 2-pair type of hand, like where you don't have 7-9 and he blocks 7-9. And then the other 1-pair types of hands might just call down here. So, to really go in the weeds and think that he's going to raise here with like ace 4 or ace 7 at the end, it's just, I don't know if it's all that likely. And again, if he chooses to raise a set of 8s or a set of 6s here, based upon your line, again, I don't know if you have 7-9 off here in this spot. I think I do probably raise here with 8-8. It would really depend on how I think the big blind, and again, if you're new, what I would think of you and look at the combos of the amount of straights here. I mean, if he's got 1 king-king, that's kind of just a nitty just call if he's got king-king or 8-8. So I definitely think that, but of course you do, I mean, there's only two combos of each one of those, right? But then it comes down to 6-6.
I blocked both higher sets, and my evaluation was that if he had a set, obviously he might think I have the straight already, but I thought I probably would have heard from it earlier in the hand, right? If he had sixes or fives or threes.
And by the way, I'll go back to something that How to Win points out. If you go back to my turn analysis about how the 8 really makes a hand with a 4 in it, the quality of a draw with a 4 in it, really diminish on the top end side, because if a 7 comes in, it's a 1-liner to a 9, and you went 2/3 on turn. I don't know how often he's showing up with 4 something here, like ace 4. Like, I would fold off ace 4 here for sure on the turn. So it really comes down to like maybe like a 7x type of folding, like 7-6, 7-7 that's now turning into a bluff. I mean, I know you beat those king, and 8-8, but I mean, what if he's opening like 7-9 off from the cutoff?
Right.
Or if he's got 7-4 suited. Oh man, I mean, 3,100, 1,300 to call. Yeah, this is a really shitty spot, man.
Yeah, I've got about as close to the top of my range as I can get. I was half hoping to induce a raise, thinking that he might, either make a move. I mean, I have as strong of a hand as I can have without having flopped it. And all the draws essentially missed.
I mean, the other thing too is 7-9's like the stone cold nuts. You think he might put some money in with that hand, but he also might think that he doesn't need to and let you bluff off. And then he's got the action killing cards in his hand. Like 7-9 of spades would be the one that you'd want to call the most here.
I discounted the straights and sets when I didn't get raised on the turn because of the flush draw. Like, why at that point is he trying to let me off the hook so cheap?
Well, if you discount the straights and sets by him not raising, what does he end up here with then?
Right, then it is a non-believing pair, 9s through aces, for example.
I mean, if he doesn't have sets and straights because he doesn't raise the turn, he doesn't end up with any value here except for king. That part I don't agree with. That's the only thing I'm saying. But if you really kind of live node locked that, then of course you would have to call because he has nothing here that beats you, right? But I don't know if that's the situation here.
Well, I did ultimately decide my hand was too strong to fold, so I called.
Okay.
And the villain had 4-7 offsuit.
7-4 off. Wow, that's really, I mean, that's so far wide, you make a note of that. When you're playing in this is very important, right? When you're playing in say like an out of town session, we can call it, right? Like you're from the Philly area, you don't know anybody that you're playing with. And I know this was in the beginning of the session. If I saw a hand go down where this particular villain showed down like 7-4 off from the cutoff, even if it wasn't a big hand, my thinking might change quite a bit here. Even and where it would change, it actually might even make me fold more often here, because again, it would make him have more value here from late position. Because if he's raising 7-4 off, could he possibly be raising like deuce 4? So he's certainly raising 7-9 off. So that's like,
yeah, a large pre-flop re-raise out of position might be in order. Like if I had known just how out of line he was, I could have approached it different, but I didn't have enough information.
That's an interesting one. I don't think anyone's necessarily faulting you here for the call. 3,100 for 1,300. Again, it is one of these things, though, that it kind of demonstrates that when you kind of have the nut advantage, especially coming from the blinds on a raggedy board, and you've put a lot of pressure on someone who's the pre-flop raiser, when they then put pressure on you, when a lot of their bluff catching hands would just call, they're actually going to end up with a lot of value if they don't find some of the logical computer hands into bluff type raises, which a lot of people don't in live poker, which might consist of like 7-6, 7-7, something maybe comprising with a 7 in it. And the other interesting part of this hand, though, too, is that I think 4x folds off a lot because of the 8 on the turn. So 4x naked or 4x plus pair. But thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.